At this time, let's begin today's CMC event. Once again, begin 2018 strong, 5 steps to set and achieve your goals. I would like to introduce your moderator for today's session, and that is Tanya Cervoni. Tanya is a practice leader at Canadian Management Center and brings 20 years of experience in the areas of education, training, facilitation, coaching, and organizational development. She holds her BA Honors degree in French Literature and Sociology Anthropology from the University of Guelph and a Bachelor of Education from the University of Toronto. She also has a certificate in adult education from George Brown College. In her role as practice leader, Tanya combines her expertise with her commitment to enable personal transformation to discover, curate, and design learning solutions for CMC clients. And with that, Tanya, I will hand the floor over to you.
Thank you so much, Jessica, and thank you everyone for joining us. For those of you who are new to the Canadian Management Center, I just want to mention we are a national organization dedicated to prepare the next generation of leaders to thrive in tomorrow's marketplace. We deliver webinars like this to our clients based on the requests we get from attendees like you, and today's topic was additionally inspired by the start of the new year and our desire to support you in getting the most out of 2018. For those of you who are on Twitter, we do invite you to follow us. Our handle is @Canadian Management, and feel free to tweet any of the insights you get today using our hashtag CMC Events. Again, as Jessica mentioned, this session is being recorded, which means that you will receive a link that includes not only the audio, but the slides as well. So you can look for that in the coming days. Now, without further ado, I am super excited to introduce our speaker today, Nelly Vieira. She will be presenting the content, the majority of the content. She is a CMC facilitator. She brings a ton of experience in the corporate realm, having been in executive roles. She's also an expert in the areas of negotiation and assertiveness skills training, and she's a coach. There's a ton I could say about Nelly, and if I was forced to describe her in one word, I would have to say absolutely passionate. No, that's 3 words, passionate. And I'm certain that passion will come through today on the line. She's passionate about delivering results, but especially doing it through enabling and coaching others. So who better to have with us to talk about how we can be successful in our goals than Nelly. So Nelly, welcome.
Thank you so much, Tanya, and hello everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Yeah, we're excited to have you, and I'm gonna stop talking actually. I'm gonna just pass things right over to you at this point to take it from here. Thanks.
Well,
go ahead.
Thank you. It's actually exciting for me too, because of course, just as you said, Tanya, it's a new year, and for everybody, I always find that we do this fresh start thing, you know, new goals, and the reality though is whether we want to make a change, like a career transition or even a promotion, push or challenge ourselves in some way, like wanting to influence, delegate, or communicate more effectively, or whether we move to improve or seek to know or grow somehow, that's what we have a conversation with ourselves about every single year. But often, we catch ourselves thinking, you know, I'd like to do that one day, or I wish I was better at this, and we continue repeating that same desire, yet getting no closer to a change or to any kind of achievement. So here's what I'm thinking. Rather than having the same conversation with ourselves year after year, we can actually shift the hoping and the wishing into an action by goal setting. And literally, there is a beauty to all this. I just love the idea of taking on a goal or addressing goals even for other people. I'm even inspired in helping other people when they go, yes, I made it happen. But the beauty of actually setting goals is threefold. First, by identifying and specifically defining what we want to achieve, we create that desired focus. It helps us to actually stay on track. That, in turn, keeps us aligned with what matters most. All those to-dos that get us there, that's what we're looking for. And finally, setting goals provides us with the opportunity to actually measure what we envisioned as success against where we actually get at any given time. Now, what I'd like to know is it possible that we can have an idea of whether anybody has ever set a goal that they didn't achieve this is where it all begins.
Thank you, Nelly. Yes, so we're going to go into our first poll question. As Jessica mentioned, you should see that appear on the right-hand side. And really, really important, the submit button is hidden somewhere down in the right-hand corner. So please take a moment to give us some feedback. Have you ever set a goal you didn't achieve? Yes or no, and then be sure to click submit. I have to say, I'm really hoping that I am not left alone here, that I'm not the only one who has set a goal they haven't achieved. I will admit maybe more than once. I don't know.
I have a feeling lots of people can be honest with themselves, especially when we put those stretch goals out there too, not just the ones that we want to make sure we meet, but the ones that we think, I'd really, really, really love to get there.
Yeah, that's an important point. Yeah, so Jessica, if we could close out the polls, and it'll take a few seconds for our results to appear. But you make a good point, Nelly, because I suppose if I was achieving every goal I ever set, I'd either determine that I'm just phenomenal at goal setting, or I'm just not dreaming big enough.
Exactly.
Yeah. So we will see what folks say. And if there is anyone who says no, then I would invite you to stay back at the end of the webinar. I would like to speak to you to find out what secret sauce you have to be hitting every goal. Oh, and look at that.
There it goes.
The results are in, and 94%.
I want to talk to that 2%. I want to have a conversation with them. We have some skills for success there.
Yeah, that needs to be our next guest speaker. So, but in general, I think that it's not a huge surprise that the vast majority of us, yes, have not achieved a goal or two in our time, which sets the foundation for our next question, which really is the more important question, and that is what got in the way. So you can
Absolutely.
See, yeah, we've got a few options for folks here, everything from the goal was too big to start with to my personal favorite, which is option C, procrastination.
Wow.
So take a moment.
Yeah. I can tell you for me, oh my God, distractions are what can wreak havoc. I'm one of those people that can very easily jump into someone else's need or request or conversation. When I don't commit or block off time specifically for what I'm attempting to achieve, it doesn't happen. Anything else can slip in as needing my attention. Interestingly, though, as I look at this list, you know, the distractions part, distractions are actually what help with procrastination. And I see plenty of people in my coaching practice that will adamantly defend the importance or reason behind the distraction when all the while it simply serves to protect and prolong that actual procrastination. You know,
that's a good comment. I'm just going to remind folks to hit submit if they've set their answer there, and you'll notice that we also had another category here. So if these didn't resonate for you, we've got our chat panel open, and we welcome your comments if there is another option you'd like to offer. And if we could close out that poll, and while we're waiting for those results, Nelly, what were you saying about the distraction?
Oh no,
Continue on.
Did I
distract you?
No. Of course. You know, too much procrastination, I find. The thing that happens is it soon identifies with some sort of lack of commitment, and that's what can get us down. It's sometimes a sign worth exploring, and that maybe we may not fully believe it's possible, or that we're even deserving or worthy of achieving it. It's a valuable conversation to have with yourself. It really is.
Yeah, that's a really, really good thought. And, well, we can see now the results are on the screen here. It's quite a spread, but I guess we have
distractions, procrastinations. You're right. There you go.
Yeah, the too busy and lack of commitment. So I see that a lot of people are on the same page with what we have been discussing. And I think that it provides us with a good understanding of some of our challenges, and it's a perfect segue into the meat of our presentation. So back over to you.
Well, it's good because, you see, today we can offer some tips for making a more thoughtful approach to goal setting. And where we're looking at all of these areas of difficulty, it can actually address them in terms of where we usually get stuck. Let's for a second, though, just for a second, let's actually define what a goal is. When we actually look at that definition, the object of a person's ambition or effort, an aim or desired result. I needed to say that out loud in spite of the fact that it's right there, because it's a broad definition. It states that there's an outcome that is sought out of whatever actions we're taking. And notice that it is to be desired. This is the big deal. It's what we want, not what we think we should or what someone else wants for us. It's ours alone. That's what's important. And there's no limits to the goals we set, not in size or shape or number. It's limitless. But I just want us to take a look at some examples of where in our lives we create goals so we can get into some specifics. We recognize that the ever-popular and often repeated goals of health and wellness, you know, the losing weight, getting fit, changing my diet, or just get walking, may very well be in your sights on the personal side of things. Not to mention, of course, the desire of a special relationship or a social life change. I'm sure I've got some smilers out there now. But how many of you have or have had goals in these areas? Making a career move or getting a promotion, improving your productivity, just getting faster, better, more efficient, boosting your ability to influence or lead or delegate, making an impact in a new way, or even just conquering your fear of presenting or public speaking. Amazingly, these seemingly professional or organizational goals can move and motivate the multiple actions that will affect some of our personal goals too, reducing stress, socializing more, building confidence, all of that sort of thing. How does that sound? 5
Absolutely.
steps.
That sounds great.
Well, yeah. I like mixing in the idea that with every actual professional goal we might seek or something that we believe might be career-oriented or workplace-oriented or specific in skill orientation is definitely going to fall back into our personal well-being and our personal development. We're going to introduce 5 steps today that are actually essential for clearing the entire deck. The ability to look back and forward and set goals that matter. If you look at these 5 steps, they seem pretty straightforward. Look back. Where you are now is always better appreciated when you're able to see where you were before now and what it took for you to get there. The second step, celebrate 2017 successes. Yes, yes, yes. Every step and action towards success in itself is success. It is important to recognize the positive and never, ever see it as small. The third step in troubleshooting missed goals, not beating yourself up about what didn't happen. It's about truly looking at what happened and recognizing it can happen again. So we look at how we might prevent or deal with it differently. Step 4, it's the beauty. It's where we zero in on what's most important. This is the huge and critical step of specificity and visualization, just seeing it. Having or starting a goal in itself is a good step, yes. But the difference between those that achieve and those that give up or give in is in how clearly they see themselves already there. And of course, then we need to map our action for success as our last and final step. This is creating the guide, our GPS to success. It's prioritizing, planning, time managing, just literally setting yourself up for a win. How does that sound so far, Tanya?
It sounds awesome, and I can start to get the feel already for how some of these can address those items that we identified that block us. And there are a few folks here on the line, I just want to acknowledge them, that when they were having to choose what gets in the way, like we had Scott who said B, C, D, E, F, and Natalie who said all of the above, and Kendra who said all of the above. And so, you know, as we go into these steps, I have a feeling there's going to be a very clear link back to those distractions and procrastination and the commitment issues. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, this first step of looking back, I can tell you a lot of us potentially don't necessarily like to do it, and yet it's such an important role in terms of reflection. Reflection helps us to uncover where we've fulfilled and maybe where we're still stuck. As you think about your last year, or even specifically about goals you had set, ask yourself what some of the highlights were in terms of what you felt went well. It's an important one. What, in fact, did you achieve, very specifically? Then provide equal consideration to what some low points might have been. Where did you bump up against challenges? What frustrated you? Believe it or not, if you figure out frustration, from this we can begin to identify factors of the kinds of patterns or lack of actions that we seem to be repeating and literally what needs changing.
And I think that Sorry, I was going to just say to that point, because I think you were maybe talking about me when you said some people don't like to look back. What you just said there, you know, that what was frustrating, all of that, like it doesn't feel good sometimes to look back, like especially if you got blacked, right? So rather than get uncomfortable, I kind of like, okay, let's just forget, let's look at some shiny things and set new goals. So I'm already taking notes on things I've stepped over here.
And believe it or not, to your point, that the very things, when you do look back, that frustration or that feeling that maybe you have come up, if the very things that have us feeling frustrated are the identifiers perhaps even of new or needed potential goals. If I'm frustrated with my relationship with my boss or a colleague, this may lead to I want to learn how to communicate better, or I need to be able to influence better, or I want to learn how to motivate or lead better in spite of not having the authority. Those kinds of things, where the frustration is, it'll show up, but we got to give ourselves the opportunity to look back. It's kind of our reflection on the journal.
Well, and it's funny, and sometimes we don't give ourselves that time, and when I reflect on some of the experiences I've seen happen in our classrooms, like the classes that you've led for us, for example. People will come often because of a frustration or a lack of results, and they're kind of held captive, and, you know, having to go through the exercises we put them through to create that, that transformation. They can't run away. Well, they can, but we encourage them not to.
Exactly.
And then, you know, by the end of the day or the second day, whatever it is, it's like, oh, okay, this is now we're getting into breakthrough territory. So I guess we can't really step over this. Or at least not necessarily be that effective if we do.
Exactly. Only because it won't be there to remind us. But we don't want to, before we get carried away with all the frustrations or anything on a new list to tackle, we've got to remember to include the important second step. Yes, you see all this? Yeah, that's right. Celebrate 2017 successes. I know. Some people are out there rolling their eyes right now. But just look. Remember how every step we take toward our goal is in itself a success? It's because they are to be met with the yippee and the yahoo of what went well. Who helped? What did you achieve? Or how or why do you think you were successful? Reflect on this. It's an important evaluation step of how you achieved some of your best results. And you know what, Tanya? It's also a motivation booster. It can give you some of the clues as to what can drive your success for your new goals in the year ahead, because you know it worked. What makes us feel good? What makes us feel good when you get this? When you look at one of these things and it made you, yes, do one of those, it's reminding ourselves vividly and in detail what we did achieve or accomplish. And you know that dopamine rush that we get? It ensures we're not just focused on the demotivating element of what didn't get done.
You know, I'm getting some ahas here because I'm starting to see how my resistance, I'm going to sound like I'm really negative or something, my resistance to goal setting, I think might be in part because I'm not one to celebrate. I'm kind of like, if I had 5 goals, and even if 4 of them got accomplished, my brain is so focused on that one that didn't get done that I probably am not spending enough time to look at what did get done, not only for the motivational factor, but also for the learning so that maybe I can apply that moving forward. And I'm also thinking of those of us who are on the line who are people managers. So, you know, if we're not taking time to celebrate what did get done, people are also, you know, not getting that motivational and engagement kick, but possibly not recognizing what they're doing so well so they can do more of that. So, so far, I'm batting not so great. First 2 steps,
well, you can't beat yourself up. Nah, you can't. The reality is we have a tendency to be so much harder on ourselves. We really do. And then again, this is what then is the secret to renewed engagement. It's the positive feelings that we get out of this step. And when you celebrate what you know to be true in what it is that you can and you did do, that's a yippee and a yahoo for sure. So absolutely, don't miss this step, folks. Now we move on.
My strength.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, this is the one we're trying to, I can figure this one out. Yeah. Troubleshooting. Troubleshooting isn't just about being negative about it. It's that, of course, aside from celebrating all those good little things that happened and the great things that happen, we also will have to consider what maybe we didn't achieve that we had our sights set on. And did we get stuck somewhere in particular? These are markers for us when we see where we got stuck. So when we start troubleshooting what got in our way, We can even consider the emotions that we felt in our reflective step one of looking back and see if those emotions still exist. It helps to serve as a diagnosis of some of the potential barriers or obstacles that you'll want to strategize ways to avoid and to overcome so that this time you move closer to your desired results. It's just an easier way. It's no different than troubleshooting anything that we might have a problem with right now. When our phone doesn't work, we've got to start from scratch. What is it? Is it really just the plug that isn't set in the wall, or are there other little small technical things that we had jam up or give us trouble that didn't let us get forward? So frustration will lead to us either abandoning and or really focusing and digging down and dirty. And this is the step that gets us to dig down deep and just see, what was it? Who was it? Where was it that we found some difficulty?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I'd love to hear from the folks on the phone. Invite you again to enter any comments into the chat panel. What have you noticed that, doesn't work for you, that's gotten in the way, that you've been able to identify, troubleshoot perhaps on past goals or something recent? I want to thank Lori for her comment. She's, talked about looking at not only what worked individually, but also at the team level. So sometimes you've got to take a look at things at different levels, and that's very true. So we'd love to hear from you. I'm curious, while people are contemplating that, Nelly, when you think about the programs you've delivered for us or in your own coaching practice, do you see trends in this area? I mean, I have one thing that's coming to my mind, but I'd love to hear.
Well, it's interesting. I actually was going to poke at you because I know you to be a very disciplined and efficient individual, Tanya. So I'd be curious when you're troubleshooting, because literally if you've done all your steps, and this is what I find is sometimes people will say, I was good at doing what I needed to do, but what was, those that needed to serve me or those that I depended on or areas where I was supposed to have something come through that didn't. But for you, I just want to know, because that typically, when I mentioned to you that in my coaching practice, people often talk about the distractions, whether it's family or whether there's changes that happen in their lives or procrastination, just because really at the bottom level, they don't really believe it's ever going to happen. And again, I flip them always back to that visualization stage. I flip them always to what it is that they would see and how it would look if it was actually done, and that they felt how they felt about it. So it's very important that, if you're going to troubleshoot, then you've got to be willing to tell the truth about some of the things that did get in the way. So you?
Yeah, absolutely. I can comment, from my perspective, but also what I've seen back when I'm thinking back to when I used to deliver programs around managing conflict, and I think we have a number of programs that address that in our leadership courses and directly, but the number of people who have difficulty getting stuff done because of their fear of conflict, because it's very rare, like, let's face it, that we can get a lot of our goals done on our own. They often rely on support to one degree or another and other people, which actually brings up the second thing that for me personally in the past has been an obstacle, and that is my inability and unwillingness to delegate. I have this thing like, I got to do it all, and I don't want to burden anyone, and everybody's busy. And I fail to sometimes recognize that, you know what, Tanya, like, people want to get involved. People want to raise their hand. I mean, people want to step up. I mean, not everybody, but many of them do. So I would say, delegation for sure is a big one, and the whole conflict piece. Yeah.
Interesting. Oh, but come on, Tanya, you can do it all, can't you? You know that.
Well, that's what I tell myself. But and then maybe that's why that builds on one comment in the chat panel here talking about mental health getting in the way. And, a lot of us are seriously stressed, right? Taking on too much, doing it all ourselves, walking around superheroes, and dealing with conflict. And so there are a number of important skills that we can learn to either reduce that stress or become more influential, so that those communications are,
breaking it down. And breaking it down, really breaking it down to the small pieces, because then actually it leads us into, can I move on to our step 4?
You certainly can. I want to know what step 4 is, yeah.
Well, we got to zero in on what's important. Now, that seems okay, right there. Literally, it means create the image. So you went from really navel-gazing in terms of troubleshooting and looking at all the littles and the bits and the bigs of what didn't happen, perhaps, as well as what did. But in this particular case, you're going to create the happening. It literally can, if I even take you to an element of neuroscience, there are actual pathways through our nerve cells of the brain, or neurons as they're called, where our information actually travels. A lot of the programming of our body is already hardwired, pretty much by the time we're about 25. But we can create new neural pathways. Can you imagine? We can actually, by experiencing something new and different, it opens up a neural pathway for us, a gateway, if you will, to be able to develop and to alter that nerve cell element that we are already thinking and utilizing. So what this step requires is for us to visualize, and I mean it. You know, the memory, if you think about the brain in itself, I always love this information, that our memory, what we think about from the past, what it is that we know, it occupies the exact same space as our imagination. And I love that part, because you can actually change the past by creating a picture of your future. That is what we do. Now, I'm saying it in the truest of sense, that this step is often overlooked in the step of setting goals. And yet I'm going to tell you it's probably one of the most important. I have this element of believing that whatever we see, we can make it be. You have to put yourself into that situation. Yes, whatever we see, we can make it be. And the clearer the picture, the more likely our future state resembles that image. Athletes use it. Dancers use it. Professional speakers will use it. Leaders that invoke the greatest of goals and outcomes, people who in our history we still speak about today, envisioned, dreamed, imagined, and actually held strong what that view looked like, never allowing it to shake. And that's how it invokes an emotional connection to our goal. It's just a powerful way to achieve that behavioral change, one step at a time. You capture it in your mind or put it on a vision board. Many of us love to do that. Put out all those steps, all the things that we see ourselves as, all the things that we want for ourselves. If we put it out on a board and we see it, then it's essential to its success. It increases the likelihood. Now, this is as much visualizing the outcome as it is to visualize the process, every step that you actually take in getting there. So the athlete that wants to win the race has to visualize actually doing the exercises and going to the gym and dealing with the coach and doing every piece and every act that is going to get them to that end result.
Yeah, and I love that. And I think that, you know, first, if I reflect back on some goals that I've set in the past, there are some where I kind of know how to get there. So like if it was around fitness, for example, I can visualize getting out of bed when my alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and actually visualizing myself engaging. And then there's the goals where you're just like, I want this, but honest to God, I don't know how I'm going to get from here to there. And I have had experiences where if you let yourself sit in the visualization of the future and just for a moment suspend the how, just for, you know, for a while, you start to get some inspiration, and oftentimes I'll be like, oh, yeah, okay, here's a possible next step. And, you know, but it requires, like what you said, to sort of just be present to that and kind of drop the fear and not have to figure it out immediately and know every single step from here to there. At least that's been my experience.
Well, it can even be an element of meditation as you're speaking to. The ability to just like allow yourself the room to resonate on your better self, if you wanted to put it that way, or your other self, or your successful self, or your past success self, the ability to actually see it as we meditate, then certain things will come up. We have to give ourselves that freedom, breathing in the midst of all of that too. We have a tendency to hyperventilate once we start getting upset with ourselves about what's not happening, and then we skip over everything else. But if we can just sit and resonate with how beautiful a picture we can create for ourselves, because we are perfect already to start with. So let's just move into what we define that perfect picture to look like.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Let's do that.
Well, let's do that. Well, it takes you to the final step. If you can see it, all of a sudden you can draw it out. And by drawing it out, it literally is our ability to map the action plan for success. I mentioned earlier that to me, this is like GPS to success. It's about the need to prioritize and plan. And believe me, I told you earlier, and I make no qualms about it, especially having become a new grandmother and all this sort of thing. If there's a distraction in the way that says, ooh, a potential for me to play over here, I'm done. Nothing else seems to hold my attention better. But I've got to manage the time. I've got to prioritize what it is that I've made as goals for myself. When I take care of me and when I'm happy with the number one on the basis of everything I've checked off my to-do list, I'm much better as a person to everyone else. I'm much happier and fulfilled and able to be able to provide and to give and to speak with anybody else. Because it's easy to get overly ambitious when we're reimagining all this, right? But it is important that we don't overdo it. We set ourselves up for success. When we unpack the goal, as they say, we have to look at what it's going to take to achieve it. The specifics alone are what lead you into the to-do steps. And a goal, by the way, it's really important, is no different than perhaps what many of you already experienced from a work goal setting point of view, where we're often asked to think in terms of SMART when we think of writing our goals. And SMART is simply an acronym for being specific, like absolutely specific to what it is, bring it right down, to it being measurable. Are you going to be able to see it and know that you've achieved it? Not unless you measure it, not unless you have something that says, when I have accomplished this, this is what I'm doing differently. This is how I look differently. This is what I'm saying differently. Or perhaps even this is what I'm now spending my time on differently. Achievable. I mean, certainly there's a lot of things I'd like to write down that I know are impossible for me to achieve. Being able to fly would be one of them, and I don't mean in an airplane. But I'm talking about what is realistic in our life. What is it that really applies? And that leads us, if it's achievable, it's also got to be relevant to who it is we are. And you know, I always do that check on the relevant by whether or not this is something that, is it something I've decided I should be doing because of where I am in my career, in my profession, or that I should have had done by now because of what other people have achieved and I'm comparing to. So relevant has to be relevant to my goal, relevant to me, relevant to what it is I want for my life. And most importantly, and here's the one that gets us every time, we've got to have it be time-bound. It can't just be the pie in the sky. I hope one day, or I wish this will happen. If we don't set a timeline for it, we don't execute it. It just doesn't happen. So we need our own little illustration of a plan of action, whether you decide to do it on a month-by-month or a week-by-week, and for some goals, it may even be a day-to-day. It's activities and tasks and specifics that actually enable the goal. So, Tanya, I'm going to ask you on this one, what's worked for you? Uh-oh.
Oh, what's worked for me? Well, it's very, Well, I will admit that I might come across as a planner, but I'm not a huge planner. And so I need to put accountability structures in place. And I was thinking about this the other day as I knew this webinar was coming up, and I have a small example. It seems seemingly, insignificant, but sometimes it's the small things that make the difference. So a few weeks back, there was a snowstorm here. I live just outside of Buffalo, New York, and it prevented me from getting to my Saturday morning workout. And I'm not going to lie, I was kind of happy about that. I was like, I have a legit excuse not to work out. Yay. And so thinking I was off the hook, I get this text message from my trainer who knows me well, and she decided to text me a workout, being very explicit on the number of squats and this and that, all these kinds of things that I could do at home without equipment. And here's the kicker. At the end of the text message, she said, and let me know when you're done. And I'm like, really? So I had a choice. I could be out of integrity and lie, or I could get myself out of bed and just do it. And so I got out of bed, I did it, felt great for having done it, felt even better for being able to report on having done it. And I realized kind of in that moment that, like, what is that, 5, 6 words, let me know when you're done? It changed the course of my day, because I probably would have kind of just ignored it and hoped that she didn't ask. So for me, accountability structures really help.
I love it, and I have to admit, I'm probably on the same lines with you. I mean, the coach here needs a coach too, and whenever there's something big for me, or whenever I'm feeling very nervous about whether I'm achieving or not achieving, and believe me, when it comes to certain things like you, I can really pull down the negative quite quickly if I'm not careful. I do as well have someone, and I call her my angel, because literally she'd be someone that would text me and advise me of something, or provide an encouraging word on a particular date where I'm nervous about something not coming through. She'd be someone that literally says, what do you need me to do to help you be successful? Like, oh my God, I just want to put her in my pocket sometimes. So if you have a friend like that, whether they're coach or whether they're just a best friend that definitely looks out for your interests as you do theirs, I'm telling you, utilizing. And that's part of delegating too. That's part of that, just utilizing what you have outside of you for little check-ins, or for someone to just say, how did it go today? Or, okay, use your words, or all right, did you do any public speaking this morning, or any of that stuff? Like, just to be able to give yourself the opportunity to, through it all, celebrate some small wins, be pushed with a little bit of progress, and just not being apologetic for your focus, not having to worry about the fact that, oh, this is only for me and not for anybody else, because when it is for you, it is for everybody else. Believe me, it's valuable.
And you raised a good point, and I just want to acknowledge a comment in the chat panel just around leveraging resources. So Lori says, set dates, times to review progress with yourself, manager, team, et cetera, through the project process. So there are often, a number of people in your circle, whether that's in the corporate environment, like your manager, colleagues, that can help hold you to account and hold the whole team to account. And Janet adds that she took our Successfully Managing People as well as our Engaging a Multi-Generational Workforce courses, which helped her learn how to communicate with people. So sometimes, sometimes it is honing in on those skills that you determine through the troubleshooting, I guess through step 3, that you really need to ramp up to be more successful. So
brilliant. Some
great contributions. Thank you.
Love it. Well, you've just actually, Tanya, you're pointing out a few things that I love that little cloud in the sky, by the way, because that's sometimes how my head feels. But right now, it's certainly clear. Getting clear about what you want. Wow, this is the one where, when all is said and done, it's a matter of making sure that that inner voice, sometimes in your head, the one that can oftentimes be a critic, it's where we shut that one down, okay? We've got all kinds of we just finished talking about all different ways or things that we can utilize or ways of managing that definitely should overstep any of that inner critic that's in our head. So that's it. But by refining your goals, we're getting even clearer in being sure that this is what we want. I know that sometimes it's just a valuable enough question when you say, oh, I'd like to get a promotion. I'm looking to get a promotion. And so checking with yourself, are you sure? Are you positive that this is what you want and not what somebody is telling you you should have? Now, have you considered all the things that will come with that promotion? Are you sure that you're clear about having that? Are you sure that you are embracing it, not only on a physical basis of what actions need to happen, but are you clear about on an emotional basis what you're looking forward to or what you're wanting to see happen as a result of achieving this goal? So this is the power of the why. I know there's a lot of talking about that out there, I know, but I just wanted to emphasize, Tanya, that when we answer the question for ourselves as to why am I doing this, why do I want this so bad, it's equally as important as understanding the what. I mean, just choosing things, it's limitless. Knowing why you're doing it and being realistic in it is a much more peaceful way of going about it. I know there's a lot of A-type personalities out there that just want to tackle 1,000 things at a time. And in the same breath, it's the ability to just have a huge smile on your face and knowing that why you did something was totally for you and for the purposes that only you celebrate in necessarily. It doesn't have to be about anybody else. And we got to keep it fresh. If there's something that we're not making happen or a should that does come into our mind, we want to just make sure that we're revisiting and we're flexible enough. Life is going to happen. Things are going to show up. There's going to be sidetracking and all sorts of things that just go on in life because nobody's waiting for you. Yet at the same token, when you've got clarity, even if you have to sidestep, you'll always know that that GPS is going to bring you back on track, even if you stop for a coffee somewhere. And that's the way I like to look at it.
Well, and I love it, and I love the power of why, and you're right, there's a lot out there, and it reminds me that when my daughter, who's now 7, was quite young and couldn't understand why Mommy was leaving to go work out, I would say to her, you know, I really want to take care of myself so that I live a good long life and that I'm healthy, and she would love that. And now I still hang on to that. So sometimes when my fitness trainer is not texting me personally and I'm not feeling like getting up, I remember the look on her face. So sometimes our why can be about us but also be bigger than us, and sometimes we have to tap into that to really have that motivation.
Your daughter is that part of us, so of course that bigger us, that bigger why for you incorporates that. It was your choice, and you are loving and being a mother, and thus there is the bigger why. So it's lovely, wonderful.
Thank you. There are a couple of questions coming in, but you know what? We have a Q&A section coming up just shortly, so we'll get back to those questions. We want to just make sure that we end on time so we can just forge ahead. So now that we're clear, what's next,
Nelly?
I'll leave
it to you. Well, this is where, when we're clear sometimes, we oftentimes figure out that maybe there's something we need to figure out how to do better that we're not perhaps doing so well. When it comes to setting goals that we set related to our workplace, we've got to factor in that maybe there is some development we have to expand our mindset with, or our capabilities, or somehow to build our confidence with. Maybe it literally is a skill or a to-do that might be necessary. I know that even me being a part of CMC here, I certainly respect and recognize that you guys spend a lot of time and a great deal partnering with not only just individuals but organizations across the country to support all this. And I know you and the team at CMC, Tanya, you've worked to align a lot of offerings to some of the most common goal categories that we've seen now at our work. What do you figure?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to have us advance to the next slide. We do see that a lot of the goals from our clients can be categorized into these 4 buckets, and we've spoken to some of this throughout the webinar. Maximizing productivity, so again, really getting more done and hopefully with not an increase in stress. Aligning and influencing for success. So this can even be, thinking more strategically. It could be what you talked about previously, overcoming a fear of presenting so you can be more influential. And, a really big one now in today's flatter work environment is just the influencing others without authority, because frankly, whether you have authority or not, influencing from a place of engagement is much more effective. Then there's the whole improving relationships at work, and that touches on what I mentioned previously, being able to address conflict, being comfortable with that. It could be better leadership skills, being a better coach, and then, you know,
negotiating.
Yes, well, there's negotiating, and a big part, you know, because we know that you're an expert in that, and as well as assertiveness, right? I think assertiveness goes hand in hand with influence and conflict and fear of upsetting people and knowing ourselves and getting back to that question about what do you want and what is it going to, how are you going to have to show up, right, to do that. So we have a final poll question here. Those of you on the line, we'd love to hear, when you're looking at 2018 and beyond, which of these categories resonate or align best with what you want to accomplish. So that poll question should be open on the right-hand side, and please be sure to hit the submit button when you're finished. So would it align to, you know, the productivity, the influencing, the relationships, or leading for results? And I do appreciate that these are interconnected.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. So when you know, think back to what I was saying about conflict, so there's a connection to relationships. There's a connection to, I mean, if you're not afraid, if you're afraid to hold someone accountable, then it's going to affect your productivity. But to the best of your abilities, let us know which one this aligns under, and let's close out that poll. And as we wait for the results, I know from, go ahead, Nelly.
Well, I was just going to say, again, you know, this is, when you're looking at these categories, oftentimes just think about how you feel at work, where things show up, or where something has you perhaps feeling as though there is a less than, or I wish I had, or I could. And again, just in simple things like not being able to speak up at a meeting, or the need to contribute in a way that hasn't been invited yet, those sorts of things. One leads to the other in terms of what it is you're attempting to achieve from a work goal point of view. And oftentimes it can be the tiniest skill base or the simplest of things that can really influence changing anything. Whether it's the status of where you are and how you're employed, or the relationships in the way in which you lead, or the colleagues that you are working with. So it's a number of things, but remember the feelings, and that'll lead you to what the need might be.
I agree with that entirely, and I'm sure we've both seen this in coaching and classroom environments as well, where someone can hone in on one skill, and then you get the domino effect, you know. So if they're able to be more assertive, it changes everything.
Totally.
Well, the results are just in here, so I'm going to just redirect us here. And it looks like there are some fairly even spread, but a lot of folks who want to be more influential, followed closely by leading for results and then productivity. Well, you know, yeah, it's great, actually. And, you know, before we move into the Q&A section, which is coming up in one more slide, I wanted to just mention, for those of you who may be not as familiar with the programs and the resources that we offer, that, you know, we have a ton of courses, whether it's classroom, online, free webinars like this one, et cetera. But here are a few of our top products I just wanted to make you aware of. We are super stoked to be the sole distributor of Franklin Covey now in Canada for public programs. So when you're looking at productivity, courses like the 5 Choices to Extraordinary Productivity and the classic and ever-relevant 7 Habits. For those of you who selected Influencing for Success, you know, we've got Developing a Strategic Mindset, and one of our most popular ever, Getting Results Without Authority. Were you going to say something in there, Nellie?
I was just, you know, when you mentioned, no, that's okay, the 7 Habits, Mr. Covey, of course, he's, let's just begin with the end in mind. There you go, the first rule for visualization and making things happen, so continue on.
No, that's a really good link. Yeah, he's absolutely a pioneer in that area, so we're really thrilled to be offering people those courses. When it comes to improving relationships at work, we have a ton of communication courses, but again, you know, what I found interesting in my work in talent management, the research shows that one of the top skills that differentiate an average performer from someone who has a lot of potential and gets a lot done is that ability to have those uncomfortable conversations. So responding to conflict, again, fabulous course, and that links directly with emotional intelligence, of course. And then as it relates to our final category, leading for results, well, we all are about leading and managing at CMC, but a coaching skills course, we're really proud of this one. And then, of course, maybe you just need some fundamental leadership training. But I do want to say, regardless of whether any of these are resonating with the folks on the line, I wanted to highlight that we have a group of really fun and really resourceful people who are our training advisors, and they are literally standing by. So whether it's you just want to be pointed to another webcast that was recorded, whether it's an article, whether it's a 1-day, 2-day, 3-day course, give them a call. They'd love to support you and talk to them about your 2018 goals, talk to them about maybe where you've gotten stuck in the past, and we would love to help. So that's the end of that portion, and I do want to address some questions that have come in. So those of you, again, I invite you, there's a chat panel, just expand the chat panel and enter your question there, and we're going to move in to the Q&A section here right now. There was a question, and I'm just going to scroll back here, that one of the participants on the line had, and the question was, do you have any suggestions for self-accountability structures? So I guess, you know, in some of the examples we were providing, we had some examples of how others can support you, like with my fitness instructor and stuff, but self-accountability structures, does that say anything to you, Nelly?
Interestingly enough, I have a friend of mine who is tech crazy, if you will, and if it's something that has to be in your sites anyway, there are apps actually that will provide you with reminders. There are apps that institute and will send you messages of encouragement. There are ways that you can, in fact, have yourself talk to yourself through an app. Believe it or not, I mean, he uses all of this in a way to drive everything when it comes to whether it's his physical achievements that he wants to have with developing a body and a nutrition system, or whether it has to do with productivity in terms of what he does from a sales effectiveness and managing his accounts and all the things that he wants to be able to improve there. So there's technical apps that we can look up, and believe me, just Google anything and you'll be surprised. YouTube has the same sort of assistant aids and things that are very encouraging, as well as some of the TED Talks that allow us to and remind us of some of the things that we can seek out or definitely keep in mind or hold strong to, that we do in fact have the power. These are all empowerment and yet self-motivating elements that we're doing all by ourselves, and yet having something external or technical that at least is keeping charge of us. That's
Thank
one
you for that.
That's one.
Yeah, no, that's great. I appreciate the reminder because I do recall coming across them and then I forget. And a lot of those apps are absolutely free. So I think that's a great suggestion. I was even going to mention, I was just even going to mention one other, if I can, especially since you and I share in having children. If any of you out there have any kids, the only thing I am going to tell you, if you ever make a statement of claim or a declaration of something that you are going to do or accomplish, I know where you're going with this.
Your child, you will be held accountable. So just let me know. Okay. Just another one.
That's a really good one because they will not let you off the hook.
No.
And they will not do that either if you've ever promised they'll have a puppy. But anyway, that's another story. I've got a really simple question that I can just address here. Matt asked, what was the R in the SMART acronym? Matt, that would be relevant. Sometimes you hear realistic, but we're suggesting that it needs to be, you know, relevant.
Right.
Well, it should be both. But
Thank you
now,
for that.
This is a question that is right up your alley, Nelly. Now, it's not sort of directly related to goal setting, but I can see how it would be important. And Ashley asks, what are ways to stand up for yourself without coming across as defensive?
Well,
and that's probably bigger than a bread box.
Yeah, it's if we can at least, when something gets us in a way where we feel that we need to be defensive or we're on a position of attack, swear that you take a deep breath first and in terms of where you're going to assert yourself next. And notice I use the word assert. If there's a statement that you need to make, it needs to be made in the sense that it's for the value of you. You're saying something for yourself, not against anyone else. And when you can keep that in mind, when it's something that you are standing for, whether it's these goals, whether it's who you are as a person, whether it's how you feel empowered to do something, or whether it's what you believe, if you speak to it or address in the statement and the value you have for yourself, then what you're doing is putting it in a language that makes it clear to you in the way that you need it to be clear. It won't then become a defense or an aggressive attack or a reply to what someone else might be saying. It's, in fact, a statement for you, not against anyone else.
So that's great, and I guess that's where the use of I language would come in. So, you know, this is what I need, or this is what I observe versus this is what you did.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Fabulous. Thank you for answering that. Another question here, and then we may have to move on, but how do you focus on goals when portions of them are set by people 2 or 3 levels above you and when they have changed multiple times throughout the year? I can't relate at all to this question. Can you?
It sounds like this is a very a typical organizational as well as, you know, just a typical workplace thing that many of us suffer. And instead of having it be a suffering, recognize that there are, you know, the old adage, there are things you can control and things you can't control. And the things that are within your control, match them up to what it is that someone else might have as their goals and they have set for you. In other words, where are there similarities or areas of overlap or something that even might be unified or look the same or look like it could be towards that goal. If you can have that vision, even if it changes, when it changes, what you've done is exercised at least all the work you needed to in having it align with something that was still keeping you strong and keeping you moving forward. And then when it changes, as I say, move it next, but keep it aligned and keep readdressing. It's almost like taking these 5 steps and doing them over and over again. And as frustrating as that might seem, it's also a huge empowerment and an advancement for ourselves individually.
Absolutely, and I would just add really quickly, because we need to move on, but you know, we've done a lot of work around this in having performance goals be more agile. So I think the days of setting a goal that's a year out, 2 years out is not entirely gone, but you know, in this environment, you need to be setting goals also like this week. So what has changed, and now what do I need to focus on this week? So I would suggest break it down, make it smaller, and change that, you know, that time-bound piece, make it more immediate. I want to thank everyone for their questions. I do want to also just remind people for other free resources. If you haven't been on our website, cmcoutperform.com, other webcasts like this that have been recorded, articles, check it out. We've got stuff that might help you in attaining those goals. Anyone on the phone today who is PMP, who has a PMP designation or would like to achieve that, please know that CMC is a global registered education provider with PMI, the Project Management Institute. So please copy down this information so that you can claim your PDU in the area of leadership. And again, you'll get this recording and you'll get this information. And with that, it is the top of the hour at 3 o'clock. I want to thank everyone who has not only shown up today, but has engaged with us, asked questions, and taken this time out of your day. And Nelly, for your passion, for your insights, for your commitment to support all of us, I thank you. And I wish everyone a great 2018. And be sure to check back with us because we have more great stuff to come. Thanks and have a good one.
Thank you.